Hello and welcome. This is Aileen. Let's talk about some ideas that may be on the PMP exam that are not coming directly from the PMBOK guide. My view is that you should expect up to 50% of your exam questions to come from topics not covered or not covered in depth in the PMBOK guide 5th edition. For some of you, this may be an overwhelming idea and you're thinking, how do I study if some of the questions or so many of the questions are not coming from the PMBOK guide? There's a few ways to study. One, you want to get yourself a good study guide. My suggestion is to go to Amazon, search my name, Aileen Ellis, PMP Exam Simplified, and you'll see in that study guide lots of questions and lots of content is from areas or ideas that may be on the PMP exam that are not necessarily covered or covered in detail in the PMBOK guide. Another way to study these topics is to review many sample questions. A third way is to review lots of videos such as this that focus on non-PMBOK guide type questions. Let's review just a few sample questions now. Hugo, a member of your project team, struggles in his interaction with others. As an example, he often interrupts others when they are speaking and shows no interest in their feelings. Hugo needs to work on his use of. Pause the video and answer the question. When I look at this question, I think there's a couple key phrases. One key phrase is interrupts others, and another key phrase is no interest in their feelings. What does Hugo need to work on? Answer A, communication methods. This answer actually comes from the PMBOK guide. When PMI uses the phrase communication methods, they're talking about interactive, push-pull type communications. I don't think that's really what we're addressing here. B, empathy. At first glance, this seems like the best answer. The key phrase, no interest in their feelings, certainly relates to empathy. But then there's this other phrase, interrupts others. So I'm thinking empathy is not a big enough answer. C, active listening. Active listening has many elements to it. Do you know some of those elements? One is to listen without interrupting. Another is to watch the person's body language, to try to understand or feel what they're feeling. I think C, active listening, is the better answer, better than empathy, because it addresses both ideas in the question, interrupts others, and no interest in their feelings. D, a peer review, nothing to do with this question. A couple takeaways from the question. One is when you have a question that has an and in it, the answer needs to address both ideas. Another takeaway, this idea of empathy, this idea of active listening, these ideas could be on the PMP exam. You are new to your organization and have been told that your project will go through a peer review in just over 4 days. You and your project management team need to prepare for this. In general, the objective of this type of review is to. So pause the video and answer the question. When I look at the question, again, there's a few key phrases for me. One, it's this idea that your project will go through a peer review. Realize it's not saying that you will go through the peer review. Your project will go through a peer review, and then it's asking the objective of this type of review. So a peer review is going on your project, and I'm asking, why is this occurring? A, determine if the project can move to the next phase. A is describing what we often call a phase gate review, not a peer review. B, provide an opportunity for senior management to identify project failures. I don't like this answer for 2 reasons. One, it talks about senior management. Unless you're a senior manager, senior management would not be your peers. So I don't like the answer because of the phrase senior management. In general, senior management would not be seen as your peers, and peer reviews usually are not about identifying project failures, though they could be. C, evaluate you, the project manager. You are not going through the peer review, your project is. This is what most people don't understand about peer reviews. Peer reviews are not about coming after you, the project manager. They're about looking at your project through the eyes of your peers and asking, what can we do to improve the probability of success? D here, improve the probability of project success would be the best answer. So what's the takeaway or the learning from this question? If you don't do peer reviews where you work, you need to go online, maybe Wikipedia, and read a little bit about peer reviews. A second takeaway, lots of people have a negative connotation of peer reviews, that the spokesperson, the presenter, is being attacked. It's just the opposite. The idea of the peer review is to help you, the project manager, make your project stronger. You want to think of peer reviews as a positive, not a negative activity. The local government in your community has issued a new regulation that may cause problems on your project. At this point, you should. So pause the video and answer the question. For me, a key word in the question or phrase is local government. Another key phrase is new regulation. When I look at answer A, ignore the regulation as your project was initiated before this regulation was issued. So here's a takeaway. The word ignore is a bad word. On the exam in general, an answer that says ignore most likely will be a wrong answer unless the question is asking for an exception. A similar idea, if you get an answer that says do nothing, in general, do nothing is not going to be the best answer. B, evaluate the regulation as a change request. This is what I think is going to be the best answer. Let's skip it and come back to it. C, follow the regulation as it was issued by the local government. This is the answer that people struggle with. Regulations we have to follow. But here, the regulation was issued after the project has started, or at least that's what the question is implying. We're going to evaluate the regulation as a change request. Why? Because we might decide to cancel the project instead of following the regulation. So C, I'm going to cross out. Just because it was issued by the local government doesn't mean we follow it. We may cancel the project so we don't have to follow the regulation. D, ask your customer what to do at this point. In general, answers that say ask your customer, ask your sponsor, ask your manager. In general, these are not going to be the best answer. We want to treat this regulation as a change request and decide, are we going to follow the regulation and continue the project? Might we cancel the project? Might we change the project so we don't have to follow the regulation? There's lots of options. Many projects in your organization have failed because of poor decision making. All of the following are essential practices of good project decision making except. Pause the video, answer the question. When I look at the question, a key phrase is project decision making, a key word is the word accept. So we're looking for the exception or the bad answer. A, the project sponsor makes decisions without being influenced by the perspective of the stakeholders. This is absolutely wrong and thus the exception. The sponsor wants to be thinking about the needs of the stakeholders as the sponsor is making decisions. But let's look at B, C, and D. B, decision makers have the right information to make decisions. Absolutely, this should be true and thus not the exception. C, organizations provide adequate attention to risk management. As people make decisions, they need to understand the risks associated with each decision they make or they don't make. So C is true and that's not the exception. D, decision makers are familiar with organizational strategy. You may say, who cares? The decision makers on our project should be very familiar with the strategy of our organization because we want to make sure our project moves forward in a direction that supports organizational strategy. On this slide, I just have a few ideas coming right out of the PMBOK guide. What I'm trying to point out, some of you would say decision-making isn't in the PMBOK guide. Decision-making absolutely is in the PMBOK guide. See if you can find it. Though the question I just asked was not word for word, not even really related to decision-making in the PMBOK guide. There is an opening for a senior leader on your team to manage an important subgroup. In your opinion, an ideal candidate was identified. You hear later from the hiring manager that they decided not to hire the candidate because they were afraid the candidate was too old and would retire soon. You decide to coach this hiring manager on, pause the video and select the best answer. When I look at the question, there's a few key phrases. I think the most important phrase was too old and would retire soon. So the hiring manager did not hire someone because they thought the person was too old. Well, this is just as bad as not hiring someone because they think the person is too young. And the person's too young, they're probably going to quit and find a better job. Or not hiring someone because we don't like the person's culture or religion or color or whether they're male or female. So what should we coach this hiring manager on? A, communication methods is wrong. When we talk about communication methods, we're thinking about interactive push-pull. That's not what this question is about. I think B is going to be the best answer, generational sensitivity and diversity. Just because someone is older than you are doesn't mean they plan to retire soon. Just because someone is younger than you are doesn't mean they're not stable. It doesn't mean they're going to job hop. I think B, generational sensitivity and diversity, will be the best answer. C, conflict management. If this was going to be the best answer, we would see ideas in the questions related to problem solving, smoothing, forcing. D, business acumen. That's not what this question is about. We'll get to this idea later. You have been a software engineer for years and recognized by your team members as the top programmer. Last week, you were promoted to the role of project manager on a new software development project. Based on history, you expect your team to act as a weak matrix. You most likely will rely on the use of what power base? Pause the video, answer the question. When I look at the question, we're a software engineer, our peers view us as the top programmer, we're now managing a software development project, so we have a lot of knowledge. We're going to be working in a weak matrix. In a weak matrix, we don't have much positional power. The functional managers have the positional power. So what power base are we likely to rely on? A, legitimate power most likely would be wrong here because we're in a weak matrix. We're not going to have much of this formal power. Referent or referent power, this would be the best answer if the question said we were going to refer to someone or something else to give us power. That's not what's going on. C, reward power is most likely wrong because in a weak matrix, we probably don't have much, if any, reward power. The functional managers would have the legitimate power, the reward power. D, expert power most likely is the best answer. Why? Because our teammates view us as the top programmer. They think we are the most knowledgeable technical person. Therefore, we can use this. People will listen to us because they perceive we are the experts. Your organization has provided you with a mentor to help you move on to the fast track with your career. This new mentor suggests that you view the organization with an executive mentality. You ask what this means, and he explains that you need to think more big picture and understand how all the elements of the business work together. Really, he's suggesting that you develop more skills in. Pause the video and answer the question. When I look at the question, we see some key phrases: executive mentality, but then executive mentality is defined big picture, how the elements of the business work together. Program management is wrong. If they wanted that to be the answer, there would be ideas in the question about benefits management, about managing across projects. That's not what's going on here. I think business acumen will be the best idea. Let's skip it. See, operations management, this will be wrong. If they wanted the answer operations management, they would be talking about production and other ideas. D, leadership is the tricky answer. Some people will see the phrase executive mentality and go right to leadership. I might even do that, but then the question defines executive mentality, understanding how the elements of the business work together. This is business acumen. This is Aileen. Today we covered just a few sample questions from ideas not in the PMBOK guide. Since they're not in the PMBOK guide, you're probably asking, why do I think they're going to be on the PMP exam? I think they're going to be on the PMP exam because they're in the exam content outline. If you're not familiar with the exam content outline, you can find it in my online class, or you can find it in my membership area. I hope this video helped you today.